Hey, Gabi.
Hi, Rabbi.
How are you? Hi, Dan. Dan, you're muted. חנוכה שמח?
עכשיו אני שומע. הסתכלנו הערב מתי שעשית ברכות בשביל הנר השישי עם הילדים שלך, היה מאוד יפה.
Thank you.
הבנות יש להם גם כן קול יפה.
לאן הרע?
זה בא מאבא.
שם מאמא. ברוך השם.
Okay.
Just going to let people in.
זה מקץ?
We are Miketz, yes. Hi, Debbie. You're muted.
Oh.
There you go. All good. Now you're unmuted.
Hi, Dan.
היי.
How are you, Debbie? Okay?
הכל בסדר. הכל טוב.
יופי.
יופי.
אז גבי, אני אשתדל עד הסוף, אבל יכול להיות שאני אתעייף, אוקיי?
No worries. No worries. Nothing to worry about.
אוקיי, תודה.
We have to finish on time today because I've got something else at 8.
Okay.
Hi, Sam. Good to see you, although I can see only part of you because you're in the dark.
Silhouette, a beautiful silhouette of Sam. A beautiful silhouette, Sam. Oh.
Hello, Father and friend of Miri and Shifra and Chaya. Abu, Shifra, Miri, and Chaya.
We're gonna wait just a minute.
By the way, I'm gonna try to get over there tomorrow. As I told you, I have this appointment at 5 o'clock. So, but I'm gonna try and come by and see what the rain's like.
No worries.
To your place.
No worries at all.
Debbie, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, I'm good, Sam. How are you?
Above ground and breathing.
Yeah, you look very distinguished with the dark background. Very distinguished.
Not as young and chipper as Dan. Dan looks 10 years. He looks 10 years younger than me.
Yeah, very.
Hey, y'all.
Chag Sameach.
Sameach.
Tim, are you in a cave? Where are you? No light.
Sam, it's not you.
Look like Shimon Yochai.
You know, I keep trying to put a light in back. It doesn't help, I don't think.
Okay. You look very mysterious.
There we go. Vayhi or.
Amen.
But that doesn't, well, I guess it's better.
Yeah, looks
but
good.
Still, it's not, it should be in front of me. I don't have anything high enough, you know.
That's the trick. Hey, Shua.
Sam, I have a swag lamp. If you want, I can get to you. A swag lamp, and you just have to get a hook.
What does that mean, Debbie?
A swag? Oh, it's the old-fashioned. You know, it's just on.
I like old-fashioned.
Yeah. I'll talk to you about getting it to you.
I take a look. I'd like something on the desk or something. I don't know.
Oh, on the desk. Okay.
But what is it? Freestanding? Is it high?
No. It's got a hoot. It's got a. You suspend it from a hook. You have to put a hook on the ceiling and you suspend it.
Oh.
But it's very plain, very retro, very. Okay.
Maybe I can do it.
Okay, let's try to make it happen.
But I would have to hang it from the ceiling?
Yes.
Maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's nice. Nothing fancy, just nice with that, yeah.
I don't need fancy.
I know, simple, nice and simple.
I just need Moroccan fish from Rabbi Gabai.
Okay, I think we're going to start. Okay. Hi, Dan. Okay, so we left off last week with a little bit of a, it comes out that the a few complexities. It's, going through these parashiyot actually is really difficult. I was speaking to Dan earlier today, and I mentioned that sometimes when you know something, the more you know, the more you realize that the less you know, right? The more you go into a topic, the more you understand, the more you realize the less you understand. Hi, Ellen. So, when it comes to these sort of parashiyot, as you go through the narrative and you go through the different commentaries, and the Farshim and Rashi and the Ramban, the Rachaim, the Sforno, the Kliakar, the Abarbanel, the Malbim, the overarching commentators on the Torah, you suddenly realize how little we actually know. Or I can speak for myself, how little I actually know. And every year you go through it, and if you go through the narrative in the same way you looked at it last year, then you missed the boat. Because you can't go through the Torah like you did when you were in kindergarten. You've got to grow when you learn the Torah. And the more you delve deep, the more questions suddenly arises, because it just, sometimes questions shock you to the core. Why didn't I think of this last year? And so every time, I start to prepare this class, I'm just flabbergasted over and over again by the amount of questions that surface and resurface and the different explanations given. And I think, again, I want to just bring to your attention a couple of questions, because, again, this narrative, particularly of Yosef and the brothers, are pretty much a narrative which covers from last week's parasha all the way till the very end of Sefer Bereshit. Almost 5 parashiyot discuss Yosef and the brothers, Meir. And it's really, really something which we have to delve into. But first of all, I want to point out a couple of points from the Pesukim, from Rashi, and then I want to talk about what we've been discussing the past 2 weeks, thanks to Meir, who's made some problems over here, right? We need to try and figure out how to deal with Meir's problem. And the truth is, Meir's problem, Dan's problem, Meir's problem is my problem as well. It's all our problems, and it's really tackled by everyone, but there's not a one straightforward answer. But I wanted to bring to your attention 1 or 2 ideas which may shed some particular light with regard to how we actually go and view our avot, how we view the Shvatim, how we view Yosef, how we view the various different relationships, the complex family dynamics involved, and more importantly, what relevance does it have to us in our daily lives? What connection does it have? So I just want to again point out a couple of Rashis, a couple of ideas, a couple of Pesukim. Let's go and learn it together like we often do. Okay, so this week's parasha, Parashat Miketz. Just a quick recap of what happened in this parasha. We left off last week on a bit of a climax, or kind of a happy ending, where Yosef is thrown into the prison, and eventually the butler and the baker tell him their dreams. He manages to interpret the dreams appropriately, and exactly as he said, that's what happened. The baker gets killed, the butler goes back and reinstated to his job. And the butler did not remember Yosef, not the favor that he asked him to go to speak to Paro about him, and he completely kind of made a point to forget him. Yes, he didn't remember and he forgot him. What vayishkachehu? He completely, he tried to get rid of it, that memory. This week's parasha opens up with the dreams of Paro, two famous dreams. Eventually, he can't figure it out, doesn't know what to do. He asks all his wise men, until eventually the butler suddenly wakes up. This is 2 years later, right? Butler wakes up and he says, hey, you know what? 2 years ago I was in prison. Et chata'ai ani maskir hayom, famous line. I just want to remind you of my sins, which I did when I was younger. And back in the day, I was in prison for something that I did. And there with us, we had a dream. And lo and behold, there with us was a young man, a Jew, a servant, really a not nice guy. But you know what? He got it right. So perhaps, if you know, in such a crisis, how about you come and call him? Without any further ado, maybe it's important to point out the famous Sephorno. Pasuk says, Pasuk Perek Mem Aleph, Pasuk Yudalet. Perek 41, Pasuk 14. Vayishlach Paro, Vayikrat Yosef. And Paro sent to call for Yosef. Vayiritzuhu min habor. And they rushed him from the dungeon. Vayigalach vayichalef simnotav vayavo el Paro. They rushed him in the dungeon. He shaved and changed his clothes to honor of the king, and he came in front of Paro. Okay, it's very important to mention the Sforno over here. It's interesting. Yosef had just been sent, been thrown into the pit by his brothers, and he's sold, and for years he's by Potiphar, and then he's in prison for 2 years, and no one's remembering him. He can't believe what's happening to him, and even though he's successful all the way through, but still he's just pretty much a servant or a prisoner, right? Says the Sforno that when Paro called him, Vayikra Yosef, Vayiritzuhu min habor. They actually rushed him out the dungeon. What's the rush? Says the Sforno, Kederech kol teshuat Hashem, shenaasit kamo rega. Like all Yeshuot Hashem, like all salvations of God, are done like this. When the time comes, it's done like this. That's incredible. It's an incredible something which we can look forward to. That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now is time, then it happens, without a flick. It's incredible. So that's once Yosef was supposed to do, he was going to come from the prisoner of Egypt, someone who's been framed for everything you don't want to be known for, and someone who's been, hated all his life. Suddenly, within a couple of minutes, he becomes the viceroy of Egypt, the most powerful entity in the world. So just to understand how Yeshuat Hashem keheref ayin, how Kadosh Baruch Hu, we can never, ever, as we know, the Gemara says that even if a sword is on a person's neck, then a person al yitaesh min harachamim, person should not give up hope, because Yeshuat Hashem keheref ayin, because Hashem's salvation can happen like the blink of an eye. Okay, so as we go on, he tells them the interpretation of the dream, says it's all one dream, 7 good years, 7 bad years, and then he starts giving them advice. Who asked you for advice? The answer is that was part of the interpretation of the dream. Make sure you appoint a person who's appropriate, who will know how to foresee, manage the system, a complex, intricate system, to make sure people don't eat too much and there's enough saving over the 7 years. And not only that, but on the other side of the coin, there's actually also, once the famine kicks in, there'll also be an appropriate level of how you give out the various orders and how the food is given out, rationed appropriately. And he makes him viceroy. He calls him a new name, Safnat Paneach. And Yosef is now 30 years old when he's standing in front of Paro. Okay, 7 years. Yosef, meanwhile, has 2 children. His wife, he's given a wife called Osnat, we mentioned last week. And he gave his oldest son's name Menashe, and his youngest son is called Ephraim. 7 years go over very quickly. And time flies when you're having a good time. And the 7 years of famine begin.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Okay.
Where do you see anything about his kids in a snot?
Pasuk in the Torah. Pasuk, Perek Mem Aleph, Pasuk Nun. Perek 41, Pasuk 50. ויוסף יולד שני בנים בטרם תבוא שנת הרעב, אשר ילדה לו שנת בת פוטיפר הכהן און. יקרא יוסף את שם בכור מנשה, שם לקרוא בית אביו, ואת שם השני יקרא אפרים, כי אפרים אלוהים בארץ עונים. We now are, Yosef is 30 years old. Yosef הוא השליט על הארץ, הוא משביר לכל עם הארץ. So we're now Perek Membet. We're now Perek 42, Pasuk Aleph. Or the Pasuk before that, Pasuk Nun Zayin. בכל הארץ באו מצרים לשבור על יוסף, כי חזק הרעב בכל הארץ. So pretty much the entire world had a major famine. And they all came to Egypt to try and get some food. Now, Yaakov turns around to his children and says, listen, guys, it's time to pack our bags. And I think it's time to go and get some food. Go down to Mitzrayim. So we'll start off over here. Perek Membet 42, Pasuk Gimel, Pasuk 3. Vayerdu achei Yosef asara lishbor bar mitzrayim. You want to go back just to understand the narrative? Okay, Pasuk Aleph. Perek Membet, Perek 42, Pasuk 1. Vayar Yaakov ki yeshev b'Mitzrayim. And Yaakov saw that there was a famine in Egypt. So, Vayome Yaakov lebanav lam tzra'u. So Yaakov says to his sons, go and sort yourself out. Go bring some food. Vayomer hine shamati yeshev Mitzrayim. And he said, behold, I have heard that there are provisions in Egypt. Ridu shama, v'shivru lanu misham. Go down there and purchase us from there. And we may live and not die. Okay, interesting to note that Ridu, Rashi points out, is Gematria 210, because that was the 210 years that they were going to be down in Egypt. Carry on. Next Pasuk, Pasuk Gimel, Pasuk 3. Vayedu achei Yosef asara, ishbor bar mimitzrayim. And Joseph's brothers, 10 of them, went down to buy grain from Egypt. Any problems? I have two problems over here. Anyone got any issues with Pasuk?
Well, Binyamin is not there.
Oh, fantastic. So it's not 10.
The first time, yeah.
Okay. What else? Also, I would say the
oh, yeah. It says Achi Yosef. I don't know. No, sorry. Achi Yosef. Yeah, I don't know. No.
So let me ask you something. If you're referring to the brothers of Yosef, or you're referring to the brothers, how would you refer to them? I mean, the most far-fetched thing over here, one thing they're not, are his brothers. When you refer to the Shvatim, you should refer to them as perhaps Bnei Yaakov.
Yeah, that's what bothers me. Yeah, something strange about it.
Achei Yosef, and the brothers of Yosef are going down, and this is anything couldn't be farther from the truth. It should have said Vayerdu Bnei Yaakov, Yishbor bar Mitzrayim. So Rashi has this problem. Go on, Eyal.
It's a metaphor, I think. Because for the dream, Vayerdu means that they left Israel and went to Egypt, but Yerdu is also the bow down.
No, so over here in this context, it's not. No, Yishtachavot is the bow down.
I know, but okay.
We'll see later on when they come to and actually do bow down, but at this point they're not there yet. So look at Rashi. So Rashi is obviously bothered by it. Vayedu achei Yosef, says Rashi. So Joseph's brothers, 10 of them went down. V'lo not right, Bnei Yaakov, Jacob's son. Melamed, this teaches us, very important Rashi, shehayu mitchartim b'mechirato, that they regretted his sale. V'natnu libam, they set their heart, to themselves, להתנהג עמו באחווה, to act towards him with brotherhood. ולפדותו, and to ransom him, בכל ממון שיפסקו עליהם, for any price that the captives might set them. So first of all, what does that tell you about where the brothers are at? We spoke about last week a little bit, the brothers are really, not in if you want to call it a good place in terms of their relationship with their brother Yosef. They're prepared to murder him, they're prepared to kill him, they're prepared to at least get him killed by scorpions and snakes. And if not, they eventually sell him to slavery. But seems to be at this stage, for whatever reason, the brothers have a kind of change of heart. Interesting. Okay.
What?
No, Dan?
I'm listening, Rabbi.
Okay. That's Pasuk Gimel. Next, let's carry on. Binyamin lo shalach, so he doesn't send Binyamin. They come to Egypt. Yosef is the one in charge over there. Interesting, Yosef was the one in charge. It says, Yosef hua shalit ala aretz. I translate that. Yosef was the ruler over the land. Hua mashpir l'chol ama aretz. And he was the provider for the people. It's interesting, when you have a CEO, the CEO doesn't collect the garbage. The CEO doesn't send letters. The CEO doesn't pack sandwiches. Right? But here, Yosef hua shalit, Yosef is the ruler, and hua mashpir l'chol am haaretz. He is the provider of the people of the land. How do we know? I mean, look what's going on. The brothers come. Think about it. There's millions of people, thousands of people coming to Egypt to collect food. And what's happening? Yosef is going to have an audience with each one of these people. So the reason why is actually because of this, because Yosef wants to make sure he'll encounter his brother. Okay. Now, here's the issue. Pasuk Zayin. Pasuk 7. Vayar Yosef et echav. Yosef saw his brothers. Vayakirem. First thing, instantly he recognized them. Oh, here they come. Finally. Vayitnaker alehem. Now, don't forget, he's viceroy of Egypt. There's no worries anymore of who's going to be, whose daddy is stronger, who's going to bash each other up. We know very well who's in charge of it. Vayitnaker alehem. But he acted like a stranger. Not only that, Vayidaber itam kashot. He spoke with them harshly. Vayomer alehem, ma'ayin batem. He said to them, where do you come from? Vayomer et Canaan ish barochel. We came from the land of Canaan to buy food. Vayaker Yosef et echav vehem lo ikiruhu. He recognized them, but they did not recognize him.
Rabbi, we addressed the question last class. Why Yosef, when he's already in a good position, doesn't communicate with his family?
Oh, so this is what we're trying to point out. Clearly, we see over here, Yosef is not acting very lovingly over here. He could have easily said, my brothers, yeah, you sold me, but don't worry, we're going to put that aside. I love you. Here we go. Where's Yaakov? He does his whole spiel over here. There's a whole performance going on over here.
And we have the repetition of that word, vayakirem, vayitnaker, hakiruhu. So it's really being emphasized, the ability on one hand to recognize, but also to distance oneself. Lehitnaker, right?
Right. That's a good point.
Play on words.
It's interesting. You're right. It's repeated in the Pesukim quite a few times.
But the same root, but totally different meanings. Lahakir and lehitnaker.
Yep, very nice. It's interesting. The pasuk also points it out again. So pasuk 7, Vayar Yosef et echav vayakirem, he recognized them. Then pasuk ches, Vayaker Yosef, and he recognized them. So that's the contrast. He recognized them, they didn't recognize him. But Rashi points out, Vayitnaker lehem pasuk 7, Naaseh lahem kenochri, he acted like a stranger to them. How? Bidvarim, with words. Ledaber kashot, by speaking harshly. So he really wants to make this, like, who's who over here? Okay, let's just make sure that you understand that I'm not your friend. Right? Now, Eyal, back to your point.
I'm not saying to communicate with the brothers, but with his father.
Right. The father's even more difficult. But at least with regards to the relationship of the brothers, there's something, very evident over here, right? The next pasuk, pasuk tet, pasuk 9. Vayiskor Yosef et hachalomot asher chalam lahem. And Yosef recalls the dreams. At this point, suddenly, he's recalling the dreams. Vayomer alehem meraglim atem. He says to them, he accused them of being spies. You came to the land nakedness, that's why you've come. And they said, no. Now, again, just to point out, Eyal, you mentioned something about the dreams. But clearly the dreams have a major, are part of a major play going on over here. That suddenly at this point, when he sees them, he remembers the dreams. And at that point, he actually accuses them of being spies. Like really, the worst possible, connector for a relationship is to accuse someone for something which they're not doing.
Is acting the dreams.
What do you mean?
I think he realizes that the dream that is not a dream anymore. It's reality, and he's almost like a player, an actor in this kind of drama. He's just leading them to this kind of to be submissive.
Interesting. So the Mefarshim do point that out. The commentaries do explain that Yosef was a little bit nervous over here. Yosef was worried that they're still in the same situation. So he had to do this kind of tactic to see exactly what's going on. But let me point out another 1, 2, 3.
Have you done homework?
3 different psukim. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, very important pasuk, which maybe sheds some light on where the brothers were at. So we spoke about last week 3 things. We spoke, number 1, about Yaakov's relationship with the rest of the family. Yaakov's seeming, he's really kind of the favoritism towards Yosef, which causes the jealousy of the brothers. In fact, they actually take the coat which he gave him and, completely wipe it with blood to bring out this point. And Chachamim too tell us that from here we learn that a person shouldn't show favoritism to one child over the other. A very important lesson. You want to give a child some good feedback, you don't have to say it in front of everybody else. It's just not healthy because you got a few little kids. You tell one kid you're such a good person, you're such a good boy, such a good girl. The other kid, what about me? Well, I'm not. Yeah, call the kid aside. One day he's alone with the kid, a little treat. So proud of you. You're so good. I hope from the teacher this or whatever. But that we learned from this element. Then you have the relationship between Yosef and the brothers, which we're seeing some sort of developing story going on. And then you have the relationship between the brothers and Yosef. What we mentioned last week once Yaakov dies, they actually had to change the truth a little bit to say, Avinu Tziva, our father commanded us to tell you that this is a situation that you should forgive us. Sana avon achecha. That you should forgive the brothers. So, and then Yosef cries. So again, there's some sort of very kind of uncomfortable relationship. As long as the father is alive, they were perhaps they knew Yosef would be at bay. But once the father dies, everything's, going to fly in their face. They kind of make sure to put things in place.
Rabbi, but also when he realized the dream at that point wasn't complete.
No.
If you go back to Vayeshev, the dream is that his father and mother would come and also bow down with.
So that's very interesting. If you look through the Psukim, if you go with that explanation, then that fits very well with the breakdown. So Yosef accused them of the spies. He then tells them, you have to bring your younger brother. What's the deal with the younger brother? Since when somebody comes to buy some food, bring your younger brother here. Otherwise, you're spies. Well, what's one got to do with the other? And the truth is, they don't even answer. If you look through Psukim, they don't even answer that point. But the answer to that is because Yosef wants to make sure, back to Eyal's point, that ultimately there was no mess up or jealousy between the brothers and Rachel as the rightful loved wife of Yaakov. and being Yosef is the firstborn son of Rachel, maybe that's why they picked on him. But if they're going to pick on him, perhaps they're going to pick on Binyamin as well. So first of all, is Binyamin still alive? Or maybe they sold him. Second of all, if he is alive, are they prepared to be, just let him go? Or are they going to protect him like crazy, like we see later on Vayigash Elav Yehuda, next week Parasha? So you have this
I wanted to draw attention also again to another repetition of words, and that is Kulanu bnei ish echad. Like that appears twice, where we're all the sons of one man. And then Hayom v'achad. So when they ask, he speaks of Binyamin, we're 12 sons of one man, but one v'achad inenu. So that repetition of the one and the significance of we're one and we're united, but we're also separate.
That's very important. That's a very important point. So maybe I should actually point out that Rashi then. So let's go to the Rashi, the point of before. Rashi on Pasuk 3. Sorry, we're jumping backwards and forwards. Rashi, Perek Membet, Pasuk 3, 42:3. Asaram Matamud Roma. Why does the scripture state this? V'lokativ ve'et Binyamin, Achi Yosef lo shalach. Binyamin, the brother Yosef, was not sent. So without Yosef and without Binyamin, of course the 10 brothers. Ela le'inyan ha'achva hayu chalukim la'asara. With respect to the feelings of brotherhood they had towards Yosef, they were divided into 10. Shelo hayta ahavat kulam v'sinat kulam shaveh lo. In that the love of all of them and the hatred of all of them towards Yosef was not equal. Interesting. But with respect to buying grain, they all had the same attitude. What's interesting to know is that amongst the brothers themselves, not all of them were of the same opinion. We know, for example, Reuven, he wasn't even there. He started off there, and then suddenly he comes to the pit to save Yosef, and he's not there. What do you mean he comes to the pit now? Oh my goodness, he's not there. And the answer is because Reuven had already gone off when they were already discussing the situation. What about Yehuda? Yehuda also had regrets later on. We see that Yehuda kind of felt bad for this whole thing and later decides to take it up again when he's going to be prepared to do anything, whatever it takes to make sure Binyamin, the same tragedy doesn't befall Binyamin. In fact, there's a Rashi that says they actually excommunicated Yehuda for him being the leader of the group and making this decision. But interesting to note, on the other hand, that there is this difference in opinion. On the other hand, Shimon, later on, what happened? Shimon gets put in prison. All the brothers get put in prison for 3 days. They get sent back, and one brother is left behind. Rashi says, which brother was left behind? Shimon. Why Shimon? Let's have a look. You look at Pasuk. Here.
Chavdalid.
Chavdalid, thank you. Let's go to the middle of Pasuk. Vayikach meitam at the end of Pasuk, and he took from them Shimon, vayesor oto le'enehem, and he imprisoned them before their eyes. Says Rashi, why Shimon? Why Shimon all of them? Says Rashi, guess what? Who ishlich olabor? Because Shimon was the one that actually put Yosef in the pit.
How does he know?
So he quotes the Midrash.
See, that's the problem. Okay, so that's the problem I have. I don't know if Meyer meant the same thing.
One second, let me finish the Rashi and I'll come to your point. I know what you want to say. Rashi has proofs because you'll see from the later Pasuk that we see in other places that he's referred to as Echad. It's a broader discussion than now. But Hu Shamar Levi Hine Ba Lachlamot Al Zeba. Shimon was the one that said, also, look, the dreamer is coming. So there seems to be, again, I don't want to dispute your claim right now of where Rashi gets this from, because that's not relevant to this Pasuk. But what I do want to bring out is one point that there was seemingly a difference in opinion with regards to the actual sale. Okay, and I'll get back to your point in a minute in what I want to finish off the class with. I just want to bring to your attention Pasuk Chafalef, going back to Pasuk 21. So we discussed that there's different relationships between the brothers in how they viewed the wholesale. We discussed there's an awkward relationship between the brothers and Yosef, and there's an awkward relationship between Yosef and the brothers. He's trying to figure out if the dreams are going to happen. If they are, he has to make sure this prophecy has to be fulfilled appropriately. So let's wait and bring Binyamin into the picture. If Binyamin comes, and eventually Yaakov's going to come, and that's going to be the whole picture. Once they manage to do that, then essentially Yosef is going to break and announce himself. What actually happened is, before he even managed to Yaakov to bow down to him, he broke down and he couldn't. He told everyone to go out. It's next week's parasha. We'll get there if he's got. Okay. I want to discuss this Pasuk 21. I think it's a real eye-opener to one specific point. Pasuk 21.
Wait. Okay.
So, what's going on? There is a... he puts him in prison. And he says as follows. He said, go bring Binyamin, and then I'll believe you to see if you're spies or not. Pasuk 21. Now the brothers are now having an internal conversation between them in front of Yosef, because Yosef is speaking to them what language? Egyptian. Right? He's the guy who's, I don't know Hebrew. And they've got an interpreter between them, the Pasuk says. We'll see in a minute. Let's read the Pasuk. Vayomeru ish el achiv. So they think Yosef doesn't understand. They don't even know Yosef is actually sitting in front of them and understand jolly well what's going on. And they say as follows. Vayomeru ish el achiv, and they say to one another, Aval ashemim anachnu. Indeed, we are guilty concerning our brother. Al achinu, brother. Asher ra'inu tsarat nafsho. As we saw his heartful anguish, v'hitchaneno elenu, when he pleaded with us, v'lo shamanu, and we did not listen. Al ken ba'a elenu hatara hazot. That is why this anguish has come upon us. Why suddenly there's this ruler acting like a maniac and telling us, accusing us of stuff which doesn't make sense? He's being cruel to us. He's telling us to do crazy stuff. What's going on? They're trying to analyze the situation. And they say, we are guilty. And it's because of the sale of Yosef. Two more psukim. Reuven stands up, he says to them, but I told you, do not sin against the boy. You did not listen. The Gamdamon in Nezrash. And his blood as well, behold, is being avenged. That's why this guy is being cruel to us. And they didn't know, and they did not know that Yosef understood, for the interpreter was between them. He turns away from them, and he cries. He goes away so they shouldn't see him crying. He returned to them, he takes them, and he takes Shimon, and he goes and imprisons them in front of them. So again, this huge amount of emotion going on over here. Yosef is this very, very emotional. He can't handle it. And we know he can't take it anymore. The next parasha he kind of lets go. But he's trying to stop himself. Apak Yosef, remember? He's holding himself back. Goes away, cries, come back, puts the guy in prison. So just I want to hear your thoughts, first of all, before we continue, on this concept of Aval Hashem Anachnu. We've got this concept of the brothers are having this conversation between them, and it seems to be they have some sort of guilt on them. They're on this guilt trip. We said, Rashi before said, that they decided that they're going to go down and they're going to ransom Yosef for whatever price it costs. So what type of change of heart is happening over here? Seemingly is they actually realize they've done something wrong. But if we try and analyze the Psukim, the Pasuk we just said, Pasuk 21, it doesn't say that. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Pasuk 21. They said to one another, indeed we are guilty concerning our brother. inasmuch as we saw his heartful anguish when he pleaded with us, and we did not listen, that is why this anguish has come upon us. Any thoughts? The pasuk does not say that they felt bad that they sold him. That does not say that.
Well, I think first of all, it's not clear that they sold him, right? I mean, I think.
Threw him in the pit. All right. Okay, you think what?
No, so I'm saying the anguish was when he was in the pit. The fact, I think there's a whole discrepancy. Who found them? Who sold them? Who, it was one tribe that seemed to have found them. They sold them to the next tribe. It didn't look like the brothers were the ones who had sold them at all. So, their whole point was they felt his anguish when he was screaming maybe in the pit, and they didn't listen to him.
But isn't in fact that Reuben was against the bloodshed and said, let's put him in a pit with the thought that he would go back later to rescue Joseph. Unfortunately, what happened was this other tribe, as the mayor said, found Joseph, picked him up and sold him as a slave to the caravan going to Egypt.
Yeah.
So Reuben that's why Reuben was so distraught when he come back and found that Joseph was gone, in fact. Then he worried that his other brothers had killed him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a little bit about Rabbi Sachs about that incident with Reuven. And he said, because the Torah actually says that Reuven saves his life, right? Yeah. And he says Rabbi Sachs actually says there's one place in the Torah that it's actually not true.
Not true. He didn't do anything. He wasn't even there.
He wasn't. He says if he actually saved their lives, he would have put his brother on his shoulder and walked out. But he didn't do that.
But he couldn't do that. His other brothers would have gone against him.
He was the firstborn. Reuven, right? He was the leader. He should have been the leader. He should have shown leadership.
But
right?
There was so much hatred with the other brothers that he couldn't, unfortunately, overdo it. And what he's able to do is convince them not to kill him. Remember, they wanted to kill him.
Right. So he should have stood up.
That. So what he suggested was, instead, let's throw him in this pit. And we know that was full of scorpions and snakes, and that would be the end of him. But he, in his heart, thought, okay, I'm going to come back on my own and save him. Reuben was in his mind. And unfortunately, when he came back, another tribe had already heard Joseph, picked him up and sold him as a slave to another caravan on the way to Egypt.
So just to bring back to your point, Meyer, to back you up a little bit over here, the next pasuk 22, Reuben says, did I not tell you not to do it? What do you mean I'll tell you not to do it? Now again, these are not, this is not trivial conversation over here. It's not like, oh, I told you shouldn't have done it. This is very serious stuff going on over here. Yeah. And the pasuk finds the need to actually point this out.
There's an interesting image here that is reminiscent of Cain and Hevel. Above the image of the blood kind of calling out from the ground. It's kind of like, and the sense of guilt, like the use, yeah. And also the use of Vayomo ish el achiv aval ashemim anachnu. That's pretty strong.
Heavy guilt.
For Torah text, because there's never any emotion, right? But to accuse oneself of, or to admit one's guilt, ashemim anachnu, that's pretty heavy. Why would they use, why is the term Vayomru ish el achiv? It's almost like a play on words, because that's a term that you use when you're talking about general, not distinct, just about anybody. By Vayomer ish el achiv. The truth here is el achiv here is really the achim, right?
That's right.
But it's an expression, right?
That's right.
Actually.
Vayomer ish el achiv. It could have been Vayomru ha'achim kilu echad lasheni. However, it would have been.
But maybe it's a hint that they're talking to one specific person that initiated the whole thing.
Or the other way around. Vayomer ish el achiv. Now they appreciate the brotherhood, what it should have been, and they said, if we're brothers, we should have acted like brothers. And now the guilt comes through.
But you know, I'm not
the one is pointing out this distinction of the difference of the brothers. You know, he keeps on saying, okay, I'm going to put one over here. You go back, bring the other brother. 1 second, there's like a whole scene going on over here. So 1 second.
And again, here's a third play. Ish el achiv al achiv. Ish el achiv al achinu.
Yes, al achinu. Again, it's the brotherhood. Eyal?
But for me, these two sentences are not surprising. It's not something that I would say, oh, wow. I mean, it's very clear that they're feeling guilty. You know, it was a major crime. And now they're in distress. And it surfaced because it wasn't a regular, you know, they did something terrible. And I'm sure that, you know, it's not surprising they feel guilty. So there's not a revelation for me with these two sentences, you know?
Okay, so that's a very fair point. You're telling me, I mean, obviously, this is the given, right? So, okay, so I'm going to point out a really, really difficult Rashi.
As if the other stuff was easy.
Hold on a second.
Don't owe me anything. Just do your thing.
I'm going to point out the Rashi to you because it's really a strong one. Okay, 1 second. So to Eyal's point, it's a very, very important point. Who said that they felt any sort of remorse? So back to our original question then. I've got another question for you. Because in the Pasuk, it does not say that they regretted throwing him into the pit. Even Myra, you have to agree to this.
What?
The Pasuk does not say that they regretted, they feel guilty that they threw him into the pit. They feel guilty that they did the way they acted to him. It doesn't say that. It says they feel guilty that they saw him crying out to us and we didn't listen. That's strange.
No, I disagree. I think that they're basically feeling guilty because they actually, it gives them a bit
You were writing the narrative. What do you think the conversation should have gone like? The brothers are feeling guilty for whatever reason. What should they feel guilty for?
Deserting the brothers, basically causing him.
Say that. The pasuk does not read the pasuk again. Pasuk Rav. It does not say that.
There's no accounting for their ma'asim, for their actions. It's we didn't respond to his calling out, but
it was very sad. It was a very heartful scene. And when he was crying out, we should have really responded to that heart cry. I'll tell you what it sounds like. Just looking for this Rashi, which I'm looking for before, and I can't seem to find it. I'll tell you what it sounds like. It sounds like that they were never bothered about the sale.
They were never bothered about the what, sorry?
About the sale or about the...
Yosef.
About their approach.
Right. Right.
It sounds like that to their level, to their understanding, what they did was right. In fact, you've got to think about this. I forgot to point this out last week, but this is also a really important point.
Rabbi?
Yes.
It's like if he hadn't cried out, that it would have been okay to leave him there in the pit or to sell him.
That's right. That's what it sounds like. How strange.
I don't see it like that.
Okay, let's run back to Pasuk 37. Perek 37, last week's parasha.
37.
Chav Dalet. Pasuk 24, sorry.
What?
37, Pasuk 24. Vayikachu vayishlichu oto abora. Vayishlichu oto abora. They took him, Yosef, they chuck him in the pit. The abor reckoned in mind, there's no water there. Rashi says no water, but there is snakes and scorpions. Next pasuk. What do you think will now happen?
I sat down and ate bread.
What? וישבו לאכול לחם. When you gut someone in a bloodthirsty, situation, you're not sitting down to eat bread unless you're a cold, ruthless, heartless murderer. This is their brother, and they just go and sit to eat some bread. Okay, time for a nice seudah now. Seudah shlishit. Like, seriously? Yeah.
I think that they actually recall, well, what you remember from this kind of act is, it's like when you're in a way, just when you, let's say you need to kill someone and you remember the begging and the despair and the act is not the act of killing him, it's what the person, how did he act before he was gone. That's what leaves them, so that's why I think, for me, their reaction or what
we're trying to analyze the brother's own behavior. They're taking guilt for something that happened, right? But that guilt which they're taking, they're trying to describe what they're guilty for. And the description is not very descriptive over here. And furthermore, when we know what happened at the actual story, straight after they go and sit down to eat bread. I'm just going to read you out Sephorno because we're running out of time and I want to point out a different point. Yeshvu le'echol lechem, said the Sephorno, one of the great medieval commentators, Shlo haya kol ze b'neihem takala o michshol she'imana milikvoa seudatam. This whole story, this whole scene, they did not feel there was anything wrong with it for them to be able to, just sit down and have bread. They had a normal. It was lunchtime. Let's go sit down bread. This was the normal case study. This is just a normal situation which they're doing over here. They're just carrying out, eating breakfast or eating supper, the Last Supper, or just after the Last Supper, right? What's going on over here? It's just regular.
Unless the whole idea is to put him in the pit, let him just suffer a bit. We'll watch him, we'll eat our bread, and then take him out. Like when you put someone in detention.
Yeah, that's clearly not what happened because they go coat in blood. They go to Yaakov and say, "Your poor son." They didn't say anything. Yaakov said, probably a wild animal ate him. They don't tell Yaakov anything. This is cold-hearted stuff. Okay. We've got a lot to discuss. Maybe we'll continue a little bit more next week, but there's so much more. But I just want to bring to your attention one small point. I want to read you out an article which I have from a couple of years ago. To Myra's point and to Dan's point, a little bit about us. There's someone called Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. I think he's over 90 now, Bianara. He was a rabbi in Atlanta. And he writes the following. It's an article in one of the papers. What occurred in the biblical narrative on this visible macro level is true in accordance with how Torah Baal Peh explains it. Yeah, no, I want to start from here. Basically, he wrote an article and someone wrote back very strongly against him, and he's coming to defend why he wrote this article. This is one of the Jewish papers. He writes like this: perhaps our disagreement lies in our respective readings of the well-known dictum of the sages that en mikra yotze midei pshuto. Gemara and Shabbat, a verse does not lose its simple meaning, and a bit what Myra alluded to last week. This means that although every word of Torah contains 70 panim, 70 different aspects, and nun shari binah, 50 gates of wisdom, different ways of understanding the Torah, the narratives of the Torah are also true on their elementary level. Furthermore, they are not only true on this level, they are Torah, meaning teachings on this level as well. It means when you look at the Torah, you look at the actual story from a simplistic level, the Torah wrote it in that sort of narrative because there's something to learn from it as it is, as human beings. What occurred in the biblical narrative on the visible macro level is true in accordance with how Torah Baal Peh explains it. In this view, The forefathers were spiritual giants who were never motivated by mundane or ordinary concerns, as the simple meaning of the text might occasionally lead us to believe. We know that. They were giants. In fact, Rabbi Aaron Kotler wrote, you have to look at them as malachim, as angels, but angels who are people. So when you compare them to us, they're angels, but they're people. So on a macro level, on a micro level, then we have to figure out what's going on. Nevertheless, the simple meaning of the text informs us that at least on some elementary level, these spiritual giants also had certain mundane concerns. For if this were not so on a micro level, then the Torah would not have permitted the simple meaning of the verse to have given this impression, since ein mikra yoteh midei pshuto. And what I elaborated on at the beginning, that Rashi is coming to say a simplistic understanding of the pasuk to teach us a practical lesson, what we can take out of the Torah. Yeah. This explains why the sages derive from the Joseph story that one should not pay excessive attention to one's hairstyle, basing themselves on the verse that Joseph acted like a youngster. Rashi points out that he was, busy combing his hair. That a father should not favor one child over another, which is based on the special cloak which Yaakov gave his son Joseph, mentioned earlier. There are many other midrashim which moral lessons are derived from the simple meaning of text, even though the verses have more profound messages underlying them. This is because there are layers and layers of meaning to each biblical verse, from the simplest to the most profound and mysterious. I want to go just quickly jump ahead. If the Torah teaches us that our forefathers were not perfect creatures, albeit on a micro level, then we too, in presenting the life stories of contemporary great Jews, no, that's not what I want to say. Here. My point was that by suggesting that our greatest contemporary leaders emerged as a perfect creatures from the womb and remained perfect all their lives, the readership was being discouraged rather than uplifted. Okay, that's the bottom line. I want to read you one other article from Rabbi Hirsch. Maya, to your point, the Torah never hides from us the faults, errors, and weaknesses of our great men. Just by that, it gives the stamp of veracity to what it relates. But in truth, by the knowledge which is given us of their faults and weaknesses, our great men are in no wise made lesser, but actually greater and more instructive. If they stood before us as the purest models of perfection, we should attribute them as having a different nature, which has been denied to us. So it's not fair. How can we learn from the Avot if they were born like that to be so holy? Were they without passion, without internal struggles, their virtues would seem to us the outcome of some higher nature, hardly a merit, and certainly no model that we could hope to emulate.
Yeah.
Take, for instance, Moshe's anava, his humility. Did we know that he could fly into a passion? His meekness and modesty would seem to us to be his inborn natural disposition. And lost to us, as an example, just his Shim'u na hamorim, where Moshe Rabbeinu goes and screams at the Jewish people, which the Rambam Maimonides actually says is the reason why he's lost his merit to go in to lead the Jewish people into Israel, because he lost himself. He just gave way to his anger. That concept gives his anava its true greatness, shows it to us as the result of a great work of self-control and self-involvement, which we all should copy because we all could copy. The Torah also shows us no faults without at the same time letting us see the greater or lesser evil consequences. From our great teachers of the Torah, and truly, Ramban can be reckoned amongst the very greatest, we would accordingly learn that it may never be our task to whitewash the spiritual moral heroes of our past, to appear as apologists for them. They do not require our apologies, nor do such attempts become them. Truth is the seal of our Torah, and truthfulness is the principle of all its true and great commentators and teachers. All this, if you would have to say with the Ramban, Chet Avraham Avinu, Chata Avraham Avinu, Chet Gadol Bishkaga. Avraham Avinu made a serious sin by mistake. And the Ramban says it 2 or 3 times. He said about Sarai Imenu when he bothered Hagar and Ishmael when he kicked them out. He said Sarah made a mistake. Moshe Rabbeinu made a mistake. We spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu being a mortal someone who makes mistakes, because that is something we can actually learn from. I think this is a really incredible point over here. But what's important for us, and what I want to
Rabbi?
say, yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt. It's so interesting. I want to jump in, but I just want to say I got to jump on another meeting at 8 o'clock.
I have to also finish in exactly
coming in. So I'm going to jump, but I don't want to think that I left because I didn't agree with you. Although I didn't agree with you, but anyway, that's a different point.
We'll talk another time. I actually have to go somewhere as well. So, Myra, I'll see you. I just want to wrap up what we said. The point is that when we learn something from our Chachamim, from our great Gedolim, we can't whitewash them. They are human. We're supposed to learn from it. And what we learned from today is there is emotions going on over here where the brothers themselves are assessing the situation to perhaps they didn't act appropriately. What it was is another discussion, but that we'll leave for next week. Okay, everyone?
תודה רבה.
Good night.
תודה רבה.
Thank you, Rabbi.
ערב טוב, תודה רבה.
תודה.